a study done in 2002, researchers' findings implied a social capital divide where younger people have larger social networks. Whereas teenagers tend to use the full capacity of available media, older people are more reluctant to make use of additional features like music, videos, and the exchange of comments. This might be due to different preferences and motivations to use MySpace. Older people seem to have a much more narrow focus on MySpace usage. In order to examine this divide and suggest ways that Twitter can cater to new audiences, I created a usability test with 4 tasks. Task 1, navigating the homepage. This required users to like, comment, and find the trending/what's happening section on the Twitter homepage. The second task, tweeting. This required users to send out their own personalized tweet with a specific message and emojis. Task number 3, searching and retweeting. This required users to use the search engine to find David Dobrik's Twitter feed and retweet one of his tweets. Task number 4, sending a direct message. This required users to enter the messages page on Twitter and send a direct message. For this usability test, there were 3 users from 3 different generations in order to have more inclusive results that spanned a wider age range. First up, the baby boomer. This user required 47 minutes to complete all of the tasks and only got 2 out of 4 of the tasks done correctly. The second user, from Generation X, required 15 minutes to complete all the tasks, but got 3 out of the 4 tasks done correctly. And finally, the user from Generation Z, otherwise known as a Zoomer, required only 8 minutes to complete everything and got every single one of the tasks done correctly. Now, why are these results so distinctly different? In a study done by Emily Vogel, she states that in terms of specific platforms, around 3/4 or more of both millennials and Gen Zers now report using Facebook, 84% and 74% respectively. Boomers and Silents have both increased their Facebook use by double digits since 2015. Now let's take a look at why these users liked or disliked their experience on Twitter and why they used their past experience on Facebook to make these judgments. The baby boomer stated that because the location to create a new tweet on Twitter and the location to create a new post on Facebook were in the same spot on the homepage, it made it much easier for her to utilize Twitter. Conversely, the user from Generation X stated,
I thought that was all advertisements because advertisements are on the right. Just used to there being a column of advertisements like on Facebook and then like the chat box on Zoom that you just ignore what's on the right because the advertisements are on the right. It's not part of your user experience.
And finally, the user from Generation Z believed that because the like button was not all the way to the left as he expected, it was much harder to find and therefore harder to use. Despite these downfalls, these users are now more eager than ever to learn how to engage with and connect with people on Twitter. Like Emily Vogel states, baby boomers continue to trail both Gen Xers and millennials on most measures of technology adoption, but the adoption rates for this group have been growing rapidly in recent years. For example, boomers are now far more likely to own a smartphone than they were in 2011, 68% now versus 25% then. Let's take a moment to listen to how excited these users are, but also what aspects of Twitter they think need to be improved.
I'd like to be able to use Twitter when I want to, but it's overwhelming at this point. It had way more information than I was interested in receiving.
I didn't know what the symbols meant. The heart and the little line with the arrows. I didn't know what they were. There was no key to what the symbols were.
I wish my parents would let me use it.
Why?
Because it's a fun social media app.
The question we have now is, how can we create a platform that all of these users will feel competent when they are using? In order to do so, we can take a look at the information science that is behind developing platforms and making them accessible to all different types of users at all different types of skill levels. First, we can look at the need for consistency and standards between different sources of social media on the internet. One of Nielsen's heuristics states, users should not have to wonder whether different words, situations, or actions mean the same thing. They must follow platform conventions. This illustrates that because there are differences between sites like Facebook and Twitter, it makes it much more difficult for new users to use new platforms. Secondly, information overload is becoming a real problem for users who are new to the internet and social media. David Weinberger states, Too much information can hurt our ability to think. If too many bits of information are transferred into wetware, we can exceed our channel capacity, a term straight out of information science. This illustrates that because older users aren't as accustomed to the excessive amount of information on the internet, they find it much more difficult to navigate sites like Twitter. Lastly, in the book Interaction Design from Paris et al., they state, learnability refers to how easy a system is to learn to use. It is well known that people don't like spending a long time learning how to use a system. They want to get started straight away and become competent at carrying out tasks without too much effort. This illustrates that although some websites may be easy to learn for younger generations, people in older generations need the site to be much more simplified for them to be able to accomplish simple tasks like liking, commenting, and retweeting. Now that we can see how information science aligns with the ideas of improving Twitter in order to expand its capabilities to include a wider audience, we can now look at this quote from Chow and Chow, who state, in the future, social networking systems service providers should consider easier and friendlier user interface design to encourage older users to use social network sites to improve their social benefits. Let's tie this all together. We've looked at users and their first experience with Twitter and what reactions and experiences they had. We've looked at information scientists and the reasons they believe it is important to continue to improve websites and continue to cater to new audiences. And now lastly, we can ask, how can Twitter improve to cater to new audiences? What ways can their interface change in order to include more accessibility for older generations? There are 3 ways that Twitter can do this. 1, working to create more continuities with Facebook. 2, adding a page or feature which simplifies the information being received to reduce information overload for older users. And finally, 3, implementing a feature allowing users to hover over a button or area on the screen to see its use. By including these new technologies and features, Twitter will be able to expand its user interface to include capabilities that are accessible to all users.